Talk about the patch notes. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the changes coming in the upcoming RuneScape update. This patch will go live on November 15th, which is next Tuesday. Patches always go live the Tuesday after the patch notes. Patch notes are always on Wednesdays. Not really going to talk about the skins and stuff like that, because that's not really the point of a patch notes review. It's mostly to talk about like the gameplay implications and that kind of stuff. But you know, here's all the skins, and you know, you can pause it and look at them and do all that if that's, you know, your so desire. Some of them are cool, some of them are not cool. You know, there's the RuneScape stuff, and then there's the Battle Pass, which is Cyber Tokyo, and it's fine, and the skins are fine, and you know how it goes. This part does deserve to be talked about for a second, because it was unclear. I don't know if they reworded it or not. So a part of the RuneScape event is that there are a bunch of capes that you can get. You can only get the capes if you buy the RuneScape event. Reminder that this is a RuneScape event and not a RuneScape Battle Pass. So whereas the Battle Pass is 600 gems, I don't think they've talked about how expensive it's going to be, but it's going to be a lot more than that. So expect this to be in the thousands of gems area, not the hundreds of gems area. But with the cape feature, it's basically a shout out to the RuneScape grind. And so there is now going to be a bunch of capes that you can get. These capes you can only get if you buy the RuneScape event. You will be able to get the capes forever. So the RuneScape event is going to go until season 10, but you'll be able to get the capes forever. And that's important because the quests in order to get the capes are ridiculous. And by ridiculous, I mean like get 100 kills on Ganesh, play 300 games of Hunters, gain 10 million gold. Like that level of ridiculous for what is really a horribly stupid cosmetic. I know it's a shout out to RuneScape and it's like nostalgia and stuff, but it's dumb, and I'm gonna say it. It's stupid and it barely changes your anything, and I think it's dumb. So I think the whole thing is a stupid idea with the capes. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. If you think they're cool, then cool beans, good for you. That's fun. This is kind of cute. If you buy the RuneScape event, your like VGS will get like text effects. So like the old like meme text in RuneScape where it's like woo waves and stuff. You get all that kind of stuff, which is kind of fun. That's at least cute. Then you've got the Battle Pass, which is a pretty standard Battle Pass to 600 gems or 1,200 if you buy the whole thing. That's all the Cyberpunk Tokyo stuff. They're pretty cool. It's a pretty general theme. Cyberpunk, mechs, that kind of stuff. It was fine. They're bringing back Domination. For those that care, it's going to be a Smite night exclusive. So if you're into Domination, you can do that. God avatars, all that kind of stuff. Some bug fixes. Hopefully with the bug fixes, that means that they're putting a couple of the gods back in the game. Okay, they are. So these are actually big bug fixes because Persephone and Fafnir were literally not able to be played. So that's good. That means they're coming back into the game. So that's nice when we don't have to take gods out of the game. So that's good. Random bug fixes. Fantastic. We love bug fixes. They're doing a ranked reset. Unfortunately, that's all that's happening with Conquest. There's nothing else. Just a ranked reset. Duel and Joust are switching the maps. So if you liked the duel map on the duel map and the Joust map on the Joust map, that sucks. But if you didn't, that's great because they're flopping them. I actually think that a lot of people wanted them to be switched. So I think in general, it's probably going to be a good change. I think the duel map had way more farm on it than the Joust map did, if I recall correctly, which seemed kind of backwards, considering Joust has more players. The only change to Conquest that you're going to get this patch is this one right here, which is really that the red buff is easier to kill. The mana core is less of an ass. You can kill him a little bit easier. Honestly, might just mean that invading red buff is easier. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it helps mages in the mid lane a little bit, but also it might just mean like it's just easier to go and steal your red in the jungle. Domination stuff. Woo! Yeah, Domination had a bunch of changes, and I'm not going to talk about it because they put a whole hell of a lot of effort into changes to a map that is strictly being used for Smite Night. And Conquest got red buff is easier to kill. So to say that I'm a little salty about it is an understatement. But maybe we'll have a sit-down conversation with Hi-Rez and appropriately utilizing their resources on the game modes that people actually play at some point. Who knows? We'll sit down and have a conversation. This is basically them talking about how they're reworking how they do the patch notes. If you watch the patch note show, it was pretty disorganized. I'm going to chalk it up to the fact that it was the first time that they were trying to do a new format, but it went over poorly. It did not go over well. There was a whole lot of talking about things without actually mentioning any of the things. It was like talking about the ideas of a change and then straight up didn't even talk about the exact change sometimes. It was like, well, we think that pen should be different on these items and maybe percent pen is good or maybe it's bad. So we're going to change Titan Banes and Mirrodin and Obshard, and what changed on them? Great question. We're not going to talk about it. And it was like, well, that is some really interesting choices being made on your batch notes. So we're going to try to actually find the change in here somewhere. All of this is nothing. You see this? This is all words. This is all words. This is like, hey, these are all the ideas. These are all the ideas. None of this means anything, okay? You see all these words? These are a lot of words that don't mean anything. All right, into the words that mean something. Okay, just kidding. Still doesn't, you see what I'm saying? Mid-Hunter nerfs. See that section for details. Titan Bane's nerf, Obshard nerf, Staff of Mirrodin nerf. This is all useless. Why is this here? This is the high-res version of like double spacing your essay because you needed more words in order to get to that 5th page. You're like, oh my God, 5 pages? I'm never gonna make it. Oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do a little recap section, and then I'm gonna recap the recap section. Don't know who thought this was a good idea, but we literally already talked about this. This was already in the patch. We already talked about it. They're literally summarizing the summarization of their summarization. And now that we're halfway down scrolled onto the page, we can actually get to the first change. If you didn't watch the patch notes live, I envy you. It took an hour to get to this point where we could actually start talking about something that mattered. Here it took 5 or 10 minutes, so you're welcome. We cut it down significantly. Bancroft's Claw nerf. Woo! They decreased the shield size. Good nerf. Should have happened. Bancroft's Claw gave too much shield. Everybody's been, fighting Hades. You get how it goes. Sands of Time. Increase the damage on minions from 10 to 15. That change is entirely made to help mages clear in the early game. If you're playing high-level ranked, you're going to see a lot of hunters in mid because hunters clear better. And if you clear better, it means you get to go to the jungle and clear. And if you get to go to the jungle and clear, it means you have more XP and gold, which means you're snowballing, which means you're winning. Increasing mage minion damage is a band-aid fix to help them compete against hunters in the mid lane. But realistically, the problem is that you either full clear first and then get all of the gold and XP in the game, or you don't, and then you lose. So it's really just Band-Aid fixing who's going to be able to clear in the mid lane and not fixing the problem of the fact that 90% of Smite right now is just how fast can you clear the minion wave. And that's kind of the end all be all, which is the actual problem. Next up, Vampiric Shroud got reworked. They were like, you know what? It's annoying. Guardians buying Vampiric Shroud. So what if we just make it so only Anubis buys Vampiric Shroud? And now this is what Vampiric Shroud looks like. It has more magical power and no health and protections because they basically want Gooby and Zonqui and Hades to buy this item and nobody else. For whatever reason, the protections went up on Sacrificial Shroud, even though there's no more protections on the starter and the HP is going up on the Blood-Soaked Shroud, even though they took away the HP. So I don't know what that was about. Seems a little bit off brand that they were increasing the power of the starter and then increasing the health and protections on the upper level ones. Don't really see the theme personally on that one. Seems a little counterintuitive. Soul Gem got a pretty thick buff. I'm not a fan of this one just because, I mean, it's objectively a strong buff for Soul Gem, but it's just going to add more sustain to the meta. If Soul Gem becomes a meta item, it means that now there's even more healing, and healing is doing really well right now. I think it would surprise a lot of people. But out of the top, when I checked yesterday, out of the top 10 ranked win rate gods, 8 of them had sustain built into their kit. Chang'e, Cupid, Hades, etc. So adding more sustain to the game when sustain is very strongly winning is an interesting choice. Chronos Pendant got buffed, but the Chronos Pendant buff means absolutely nothing because they buffed Sands of Time, and Sands of Time is simply better Chronos Pendant in every possible way. And if you buy Sands of Time, you're basically already halfway to CDR cap. And if you buy a red pot, you're 30 out of 40%, which means you do not need 20% more CDR. So Chronos Pendant continues to not exist until Sands of Time isn't a meta item. Agni got one of the bigger mage buffs of the entire patch. Increased his flame wave damage by 10 at most ranks. Excuse me, it's by 10 and then it goes up by 5, so it's 10 to 30 at the top level. And then they increased Rain of Fire by 20 damage at all ranks. And you have to keep in mind that he can use Rain of Fire 3 times, so it's actually a 60 damage increase at all ranks. Late game 60 damage, not as big of a deal. Early game 60 damage buff, pretty big deal on Agni. Anubis getting a buff, but not a terribly scary one. They're reducing his cooldown on Plague of Locusts, which is his 1. Basically just means he's going to be able to clear the wave and then actually go clear the jungle because he's not going to have to be waiting for 9 years for his 1 to come back up. Does increase Gooby's ability to farm. And a higher level Anubis is a scary prospect, but it won't be directly doing more damage to you in PvP. Discordia, more base damage, doesn't change her at all, doesn't matter. Hera got a change that I actually don't think is that big of a deal. They increased the base HP on her 3, but not by a lot, by a small margin, so that won't be that big of a deal. And then they increased the range of her deployable hand. Normally, increasing the range of an ability would be a huge buff, but you have to keep in mind that Hera's 1 is actually 2 different damage parts. There's the damage part right in front of you, and then there's the damage part from the explosion with the hand. And on Hera, you're always prioritizing trying to have them close enough to you so you can get the double damage on them, which means having 5 meters longer casting distance on only half damage isn't that big of a deal. It'll be nice to pick people off and over walls and stuff and secure kills, but as far as increasing your overall damage in the game, it won't do that. Nuwa, less cooldown on Mysterious Fog. Won't change her at all. Stila does get a big buff here. They're buffing her lane and jungle camp damage by 20%. Effectively, they just said we're giving Stila 20% more clear. Period. To be noted, we looked into it. Jungle camps does not equal jungle bosses. So this is not going to be extra damage on the Gold Fury and Fire Giant. That's a separate labeling. But it does mean more red buff damage. It does mean more lane clear, and it does mean her getting more farm more quickly, getting to late game more quickly. Scylla buff will have one of the larger impacts on the game. Her late game is insane, always has been, but early game matters so much more. Take Stila until level 7 before she can start clearing archers. If this 20% damage increase means that she's going to be able to start full clearing at 2 or 3 points instead of 4 in her crush, that means that all of a sudden she is going to be rampaging around the map. So that could be very big. Very big. Zeus buff, also a decent change. They're increasing the damage on his Chain Lightning and Detonate. You have to keep in mind that both of these abilities hit multiple times. Chain Lightning, ding, 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 ding. More damage. Detonate charge stacks up to 3 times. So you have to times the numbers by 3 on this. Pretty large damage buff for Zeus, who already has really good clear. His problem is just that he's Zeus and he gets focused and he dies. But there is a crucial threshold on Zeus, and it's arbitrary, but there is a crucial threshold where he just has X amount of damage in his kit and he's busted, or he doesn't and he basically doesn't get picked, right? He's just one of those characters where all he brings to the table is damage, which means there's that arbitrary, like Freya, there's that point in time where either he has just enough damage and he's picked all the time, or he doesn't have just enough damage and he's never picked, and that's just by the nature of his kit. Will this put him over the threshold? There's only one way to find out. Gotta wait. Morrigan getting nerfed pretty hard, almost into the floor. I don't think it's gonna entirely kill her, but I do think it will kill her competitively. Reduced damage on minions from her 1, as well as magical power scaling. Massive damage decrease on her Dark Omen, because this is a double damage decrease. This is the decrease on the initial damage and on the pop damage. So that's a double damage decrease on her Dark Omen, and then an increase on the cooldown of her ulti. Not at stage 1, but later on in the game. Used to get down to 80 seconds. Still going to be 100 seconds now. So that's a big pop of nerf all over. Just pop, 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 pop. I think she'll still do really good in ranked. Her clear should still be fine, especially with the Sands of Time buff. And then Morrigan thrives in low communication environments. And the communication in ranked consists of you rock, cancel that, and okay, which helps Morrigan do a lot better. So I think she'll be fine in ranked. Competitively, though, when people are actually talking and using their brains, that's going to hurt her a lot. All right. Fun fact, I haven't even seen these nerfs because they straight up did not mention them on the patch notes. They just said, go look yourself. So that was fun. Titan's Bane, let's see. 50 gold increase, 5 power decrease. Okay, I like the sentiment. Not gonna change anything, but I like the sentiment. Same thing with Obshart. 50 gold increase, 10 power decrease. Not gonna change anything, but I like the sentiment. Percent pen is simply really, really good. That's just the way that it is. Mirrodin, decrease in damage. Okay, that's at least a nice nerf. So it used to give you a 25% power increase. Now it's giving you a 20% power increase, or 5% left. Base stats on Mirrodin are arguably good enough to be picked up on guys that even don't utilize the ultimate well. Speaking of Staff of Mirrodin, while I'm here just talking about this, I'm going to give you a little fun lesson on how Staff of Mirrodin works, because it's the most confusing item in Smite, but we've had a lot of people go in depth on this item and test it. Staff of Mirrodin, for those that don't know, you use your ultimate and then you get bonus damage on abilities for 10 seconds after the ultimate is used. But here's a little Trixie Hobbits' fun fact for you. If your ultimate has a long enough travel time, your ultimate will get the bonus damage proc from Staff of Mirrodin. For example, Vulcan always gets bonus damage from a Staff of Mirrodin. Always. Because his ultimate has a long travel time on it. So you will always get the proc. Here's a fun example in the middle. If you point blank Janus ult somebody, you will not get the bonus damage. But if it goes like through a wall and then hits somebody, you will get the bonus damage because it's taken long enough on the cast time. So just so you know, that's how it works. Why does it work that way? Great question, but that's how it works. So the more you know. Titans, why? Just stop. Stop it. Stop with the filler. You're killing me. Crusher nerf. 5 less damage. Fun fact on the patch notes, this said decreased physical power from 45 to 404. So there was a good solid meme there. AMC, they decreased the base damage on his swarm by a lot, and they also decreased the stinger cooldown. So you used to get 80% off your cooldown when you picked it up. Now you only get 60%. This is almost entirely an SPL oriented change. You actually don't even see a lot of AMC at high level ranked right now even. This is specifically an SPL change where AMC is kind of, you know, he's got a lot of clear. Clear is as clear does. Warding Sigil got a magical protection buff. Whatever. Berserker Shield, this is a pretty big one. 10 physical protection increase as well as 3% increase on the mitigation. Could very well help out the Bellonas, Osiris's, auto attack warriors of the world. That is not an insignificant change. Mystical Mail also getting buffed. I know. Go roll your eyes with me. 50 more health and 5 more physical protections. I don't know if it's a big enough buff to make it in the meta, but it is a big enough buff to make people start buying it to see if it's good enough. And that in and of itself is enough for me. That's too much. The idea of people even testing around with Mystical Mail is too much for my heart. Runic Shield getting a buff, an extra 10 power debuff aura. This was specifically oriented at solo lane guardians. So this change right here and the starter for Warding Sigil is basically high-res trying to get guardians out of the solo lane by giving warriors more magical protection options early and more magical power reduction options to further punish guardians for being played in solo. Sledge also getting buffed. You're going to see 5 power increase, and then they're also increasing the physical protections that you get. The magical protections are not increasing on this item, so you'll get the same amount of magical protections, but you will get 6 more physical protections if you have all those stacks built up. This is one of my least favorite changes because nothing good can come from this, but they buff Thorns by a good amount. The reflect damage increased from 25% to 35% on overgrowth, which makes me want to die. And then they increased the max damage reflected from 120 to 140. So that sucks. And then the Thorns of zapping strength, they increased the lifesteal debuff from 25 to 50, and they also increased the max damage that it could reflect from 120 level to 140 level. Thorns, to me, much like crit, doesn't make sense in Smite. Smite, for those of you that play, I presume most of you, has skill-based auto attacks. You have to aim your autos, and I just don't believe fundamentally that in a game with skill-based autos, there should be RNG on your autos, aka crit. I don't think it makes any sense. Why add RNG to a skill-based element? And I don't think that getting punished for landing your skill-based auto attacks is the way to balance the game. I just don't. Sometimes you have to up like reflect damage to balance hunters, but I would rather just nerf the hunter items than add punishment for landing ability. I just don't like it. I don't like the theory. I don't like the idea behind it. You shouldn't be punished for landing your abilities. You know what I'm saying? That's the whole point of skill-based abilities. When you have like auto lock-on abilities, that's fine. That's like a counter to an auto lock-on ability, but Smite is based around the fact that you have to aim your stuff. Unless you're a chalk, in which case everything hits everything because it's the world's biggest circle, but that's neither here nor there. Chalk 1 is more lock-on than Neathult at this point. Hades got a nerf, as he should have. This is a great nerf. They nerfed the detonate damage, particularly in the early game. Funny enough, it's actually going to go up 2 damage at the end of the game. That won't actually mean anything. The bigger one is here at the start, 10 damage, 50% off of the detonate damage. This is where you can build up all of the blight on people, and then you splody, and then they splody. This is going to hurt his lane clear as well as his early game kill potential when like you're in a wave and stuff. So it should be a lot easier to lane against Hades. Will he still full clear? I don't think he'll be able to full clear at level 1 or 2 or any more. 3, 4, and 5? Maybe. He might still be able to full clear at 3, 4, and 5. Once you get to full item, he's definitely full clearing, so. Gilgamesh is getting buffed. I think this turns the cheek for Gilgamesh. I think this is like maybe his first real buff after his series of nerfs. He became the most nerfed god in Smite's history. There's a little trivia fun fact for you. The most nerfed god in Smite's history was Khepri, and now it's and then Gilgamesh overtook him. So he's getting an HP 5 buff on his 1. So you use your 1. As long as your scimitar is going, you get HP 5. And then Dropkick is getting 2 seconds reduced cooldown. That's fine. Sun Wukong getting a decent buff, increasing his protections that he gets from his passive from 1 to 2 per level. So pretty significant increase in protections over the period of the game. And then they're increasing the slow and attack speed on his 2 from 2 to 3 seconds. So nice increase on the duration of that CC. So expect a little bit more annoying Wukongs in your game. Soul Leader isn't a popular item anymore ever since they increased the stacks and they kind of nerfed the item. You don't see a lot of Soul Leader anymore, and that affected Wukong. But I think we could see Wukong come back. Because Soul Leader is still a totally viable item. It's just not as OP as early. But once you get it going, woo! It really gets going, let me tell you. Okay, and now we're into another section. Yeah. Drown Onk buff. I like this one. They're increasing the healing debuff on it from 40 to 60. Nobody buys this. I like the change. Cool. I really like when things that are never bought get buffed. For the most part, I would say my exception is Thorns, but I disagree with the theory of Thorns, and I already talked about that, so I'm not going to go for round 2. But I do like the idea of simply saying, these are all of the items and all of the relics that aren't bought, or like, maybe the relic is bought, but nobody buys this version of the relic. I really like when those kind of things get buffed. I think those are fun because that's a very active attempt at trying to add more variety to the game, at trying to give more options situationally. So I do like that balanced design. So I think that those kind of ideas are good. Bracer of Illumination, same concept. They're going to increase the buff 5% on each of those. Nobody buys it. So buff it up, see what happens. Cloak of the Avatar is getting a buff as well. They're increasing the amount of healing that you get from it. Compared to the other one, they're going to give the same, I think, amount of healing now. This one gave less healing, which was weird, because their difference is this is a knock-up and the other one does the cooldown reduction. I think the other one is still just objectively better, but at least they're trying. Scorching Blink damage is going up because they're going to increase the duration of the damage over time. So it's going to be 1.5 seconds now. So that's an extra tick, or I think it's 1 tick of damage, because I think it's every 0.5 seconds. So more Scorching Blink damage. No, it will not be anything like it was originally. For those that didn't play originally, Scorching Blink was super bugged. And if you got hit by it, you took 900 true damage no matter what. And it was hilarious. And it was really, really funny for like a day. And then it was not fun. This is maybe the biggest potential change for a relic is they're decreasing the threshold to trigger the tremble mechanic from 15% to 10% of the target's max HP. And then they're increasing the tremble duration from 1.5 seconds to 3 seconds. This might be viable. And if it is viable, and you're just in the middle of a team fight, and then you're Cabrakan tremored for 3 seconds, like that would be super annoying. Like really annoying. I kind of hope it doesn't become meta because of how annoying the concept of just being tremored all the time would be. But I like the attempt. Let's see what happens. It's a long tremble. Sprint, getting 5% more movement across the board. Sundering Siphon, another interesting one. They're decreasing the duration effect from 4 to 3 seconds, but they're increasing the percent of current health that it takes, which means that instead of doing 20% damage over time, it's going to do 24% damage over time, and it's going to do it a full second faster. Interesting change. Could we see it over in the solo lane? Maybe. Could we see it on a support? Maybe. Decreasing the cost of Spirit Robe. This change was supposed to be aimed at supports. I kind of feel like it's just going to help out solo laners. Solo laners really like Spirit Robe as well, and a slightly cheaper Spirit Robe just, to me, strikes a solo lane buff more than a support buff. Thebes got a whopping 5 more protections on it, so congratulations, supports. And these are your big support changes. 100 gold and 5 protections, so checks in the mail, supports. Fixed it. You're welcome. Supports, believe it or not, got screwed in this patch. They always get screwed in every patch. Pretty insulting, but whatever. Sylvanas is getting a buff. Not a huge buff, but this one is kind of nice. An extra second off of his root is something. The rest of it is not important. Jingtian, cooldown buff on his knockup. Jingtian isn't really played, so that doesn't really matter. Gilded Arrow is getting a buff, but it's specifically on the proc effect. So the mana restored and the attack speed that you get from the killing blow are being increased. Don't think that's going to change Gilded Arrow at all, and thus they had to increase the attack speed on the upgrade to make sure it wasn't lower. Griffin Wing is getting a small power increase as well as an attack speed increase. I feel like the idea of Griffin Wing is really fun, and maybe casuals are getting a great use out of this item. But at high level gameplay, at the end of the day, you just got to land your autos, and buying an item that doesn't give you a passive effect because you're going to land your autos anyway is a really tough sell. So it's a really tough sell. Fun item. Not even necessarily meant to be a meta item. I think that this item is probably best case scenario used by like casuals and people having a fun time. I don't even know if you want it in a position where it's a meta item because I'm not sure how fun it would be to like have to buy it. So I actually kind of like it more in like the meme area. Solid meme, but a meme. Chronos getting the biggest buff of the patch, I would say. And I'll talk about why after this commercial. No, I'm just kidding. Increase the attack speed on his accelerate from 15 to 35 to 25 to 35. That means you get an extra 10% attack speed right off the bat. And they're increasing the effect of his section 3. This is the one that gives you magical power increase by 10%. This buff is really big for a couple of reasons. But the really big reason here is it means that you no longer have to level the second ever because you get such a big effect with 1 point in it. And they're buffing stop time, which is his 3. They're increasing the damage on it. And you have to keep in mind that this ability procs twice. So they're increasing the damage decently, 40 damage at max level, which means now you're going to level Chronos 4-1-3-2. So you're going to get more ability-based damage going faster because you only need 1 point in Accelerate to get way more effect out of it. 1 point in Accelerate is going to be the equivalent of 3 points. Or if you're using the Magical Power section, because it's got 10% more Magical Power and you've got more power in your kit now and Mage builds are super power heavy, I think that the section 3 becomes a lot more popular. And then all of a sudden you've got Chronos doing a one-shot with his 3-1 combo. Little pop it, lock it, drop it, low cooldown one-shot. So that'll be interesting. Danzaburou also getting a decent-sized buff. 16 more magical power, 16 more physical power from his passive, from the gold pouches, and then they're also increasing the base damage on his clear. As we mentioned earlier, clear is very important. And they increased his early clear damage by 15, plus he's getting more power, so he's going to have more early lane clear, a little bit more burst damage, a little bit more power, bada bing, bada boom. That's a pretty big deal. Danzaburou just got a lot better. Hachiman also getting a buff, but less important. More scaling on his basic attack autos from Eagle Eye, 110% at all ranks. increase the banner duration 6 seconds at all ranks. These changes are really, really strong if games were decided around the 25-minute marker. Because this is increasing that mid to late game Hachiman damage by a lot, but he still doesn't have the lane clear to compete with the big boys, which means he falls too far behind. Speaking of characters that have lane clear, Ishtar, she's just getting a quality of life change. Basically, once you hit her 3 and you start the jump portion, it's a lot harder to get interrupted out of that section because they're going to make the immunity frames trigger a little bit earlier. No, you will not be able to avoid getting pulled by a Wheelix. Yes, you maybe will be able to avoid like a Ymir freeze after you were like already in the air. Yep. Serrated Edge is getting buffed because auto attack assassins outside of Mercury and Baka are basically doo-doo. To be fair, even Mercury and Baka aren't really played that much right now. When they are, they can be pretty efficient, but it's really an ability-based jungler meta, aka like a Wheelix and Thor and that gang. That's a fine buff. No problems there. Bastet is getting a buff. I actually don't know why. I mean, they're increasing her dot damage. We are in an ability assassin meta. She's not super popular, but we're already in ability assassin meta, so Cleo's also getting a buff. They're increasing the physical power scaling on flickering visions. Of all the buffs that they could have done for her, this is maybe the least offensive, you know? Like, of all the things they could have buffed on her, that's like the ability that it's like least problematic that they're buffing. So I don't have a big problem with that. But once again, the idea of buffing an ability-based assassin in a meta that's already very heavily assassin focused. I'm sure if you've played Smite recently, you've gone against like a set middle. So the idea of buffing assassins at all is a little wonky. And that's the patch. The patch on the whole, the balance changes aren't terrible. It's just that Smite's issues are not necessarily balanced based right now. Like, sure, would it be nice to have more mages in mid lane compared to hunters? Sure. Would it be nice to have more warriors and solos than guardians and hunters? Sure. Would it be nice to have, you know, like, sure, those are all true. And I'm glad that we're making steps towards like getting those like gods in their assigned roles and stuff. But hunters being mid laners isn't what caused 40% of the player base to stop playing the game in the last 3 months. That's all big picture Smite stuff. And none of the big picture Smite stuff is being addressed in this patch. And if it's not addressed in this patch, there's a good chance, because the patches in December and January for Smite are usually much smaller, it means that it's almost guaranteed to not get addressed until the new season, which means you've got another 3 months of losing players. And as somebody whose job it is to entertain people that play the game, it would make my life a little bit easier if there was more people playing the game. That's all I'm saying. Thank you for supporting the Twitchiest community. If you'd like to see more videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel and always hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. Thank you for all your support and have a Twitchin' day, y'all.